Nikola Jokic? Or Giannis Antetokounmpo? Or even Wardell Stephen Curry? Who is the best basketball player in the world? Let me know down in the comments who takes the cake for you. But it's been a long offseason, and we've ran through 5 straight weeks of rankings, and we're here to cap it off with football right around the corner. And there's no better way to do that than with a controversial top 50 NBA players in the world today. Stay tuned for that. But if you like sports podcasts, I'm telling you, this is the channel for you, as we drop 2 sports podcasts a week, as well as 2 fantasy football episodes. So if you enjoy at any point, all we ask for is you support us down below. I don't care if you take your grandmother's phone and subscribe or like the video. We appreciate any and all support. But without further ado, timestamps will be in the description of the video. This is the Untitled Podcast. It's Owen. Let's dive into the criteria. Before we get into today's episode, where we know we're going to do a lot of talking with the 50 players, honorable mentions, we're going to have to go through a lot here on today's show. I'm going to need a cold beverage to get me through that, and that's where today's sponsor comes into play. Shout out to Life by Laura, the first ever sponsor here on the channel, and we couldn't be more grateful to work with Laura, right? As if you're looking for a specialty craft or custom item, check out Life by Laura. She does it quite literally all. Custom gifts from cups to t-shirts to Christmas ornaments and so much in between. Check out her custom tumbler, which is located in her Instagram bio, which is Life by Laura 2023. You can find it over there pretty easily. Or, of course, she's over on Facebook as Life by Laura, same name. It's going to be pretty easy to find with the logo on the screen now that you see. Guys, I promise you, she sent me a cup about a week ago. I've used it a couple times. And for those that don't know me, I don't usually like ice in my drinks, so I need these cups to keep my drinks cold for long periods of time because I don't ever chug my drinks. So I need it to be cold, right? And I need it for today's episode. And for what I've learned over the last week is it does a pretty good job of doing that. It keeps my drinks cold for a long period of time, and that's exactly what I need out of a cup like this. I've also tried it out with some hot chocolate. It also keeps it hot. So good insulation in this cup. I promise you guys, if you want to see it, it's over on Instagram, on my Instagram. And you guys can go see it there. Shout out to Life by Laura. It's an amazing sponsor. It's amazing to work with her. She does amazing work. And I promise you guys to go check out her page. You will not be disappointed. All right, criteria is on your screen now. But first things first, as you have to accept that you're not going to agree with everything on my list, because we all have different emotions towards different players and cities. And at the end of the day, we all have different criterias. But here's mine. I'm basically going to look at everything over the last 2 to 3 years, from skill set to health to accomplishments, with the majority of that being from this previous season, as again, that's what we've seen as of late. Now, there are certain cases where the overall talent of a player was too great to leave them off. Players like Zion and Kawhi Leonard, for example, I had them on the list because they are too talented to leave off. So even if they are injury-riddled, I have to respect the talent of the player, and they do make this list. So just remember that, as, again, the overall talent sometimes just overtakes the health availability of certain players. But another thing, as if players are right next to each other on these rankings, they can be interchangeable in some cases, as kind of look at them in tiers of 5. From players 1 through 5 to 6 through 10, etc., throughout the list. So unless you have the number 25 or 35 guy in your top 10, then save yourself the headaches there in the comment section. But that is basically the criteria. Last couple years, what we've seen as of late, sometimes the talent of a player will overtake the availability of the player. But moving over here to some honorable mentions, and this is already going to start hot. But here we have Chris Paul, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Jeremy Grant, Kyle Kuzma on the left side of your screen. On the right side, we have Miles Turner, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, the young duo there in Orlando, Nick Claxton, and Alperen Sengun. Again, these honorable mentions are not in order. You can make the case that any of these top 20 guys can be in the 45 to 50 range of this list, right? I'm not gonna bat an eye if you have a personal preference. The other guys are Rudy Gobert, DeAndre Ayton, Time Lord for the Celtics, LaMelo Ball, Jarrett Allen, Tyler Hero, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Josh Giddey, and of course, to close out the honorable mentions, we have Scotty Barnes in the bottom right of your screen. that's going to do it for our honorable mentions. Again, if you have any of those guys in your top 50, right, I'm not going to bat an eye unless you have like Scotty Barnes as your 13th best player in the league. Then we got some problems, right? But moving over here to the top 50, at number 50, the 50th best player in the NBA is Brook Lopez, a.k.a. Splash Mountain. And this is a player that I believe he should be looked at in this modern generation as one of the most influential players of all time because of how he's adapted his game to extend his career and still be playing at a very high level. As we know, he dominated in Brooklyn for years and years as a traditional back-to-the-basket big, and he eventually would become their all-time leading scorer. He still is to this day, by the way. But then he had a short stint in LA. We know that wasn't the greatest situation. He got money from them, and that was basically it. But then he found his way to Milwaukee, and since he's been there since 2018, he's kind of completely changed the way he plays the game. He's more perimeter-centric now than interior-centric, and he's shooting like 40% from three on like 6 to 7 attempts a game as a 7-footer. You don't see that at a very efficient rate, and Brook Lopez has done that in his time there in Milwaukee. He still brings them all-NBA defense, being one of the best help defenders and anchors in that same time span. And to change your game in the middle of your career and still be very effective at it after being a franchise's leading scorer, to change your play style, be very effective at it, it's worth note and it's worth admiring because Brook has done nothing but help this Bucks team compete for years and years, and he was selfless and he did what was absolutely best for this Bucks team and to help Giannis develop, right? And that's, I think, really why he's still a top 50 player here in the NBA, in my opinion. One of the most influential because not every kid's going to be Steph Curry. Not every kid can shoot like Steph Curry or even reach the minimum of Steph Curry in their lifetime. But to know that he's a proven veteran, again, that was a franchise leading scorer. He had success with one play style, but realized it wasn't going to last much longer, completely changed it, adapted to his new situation there in Milwaukee, and did what's best for his team at the highest level is inspiration, and it's worth admiring because I think a lot of the younger generation just need to realize you don't need to be the guy to be relevant and to be a Hall of Fame level player like Brook Lopez has been in his career. He's at my number 50 spot. Klay Thompson at number 49. Too much respect for Klay to leave him off this list, even if he's lost a couple steps and he's not the flashiest player. Moving over to OG Anunoby at number 48. He's an all-NBA defender who can guard really 1 through 4 on any given team, and he's still going to give you 17 a night on almost 40% from 3. Super, super underrated there in Toronto, and he's kind of the reason that Toronto's willing to give off of a player like Pascal Siakam, right? An all-NBA level player because OG is that talented. Moving over to 47, we have Desmond Bane. He continues to take strides in his game each and every year, especially on the offensive side of the ball, as last season he was giving you 21 a night on 40% from 3. Call me crazy, but I think with Ja Morant out for the first 25 games of next year, I think Desmond Bane might find himself in some all-star conversations as the leader of that Grizzlies team if Jaren doesn't take a step up offensively. And then 46, we have Tyrese Maxey. Again, this is a dude that can be your number 1 scoring option on nights. Other nights, he can be your number 4 scoring option on nights and still be very effective and still, at times, could give you 20 a night. Tyrese Maxey's a bucket, with or without James Harden. I think next year he's going to average about 25 a game. And I'm very excited to see the potential that Tyrese Maxey has next to Joel Embiid, at least for next season. But again, this is a good reminder. If you forgot already, view these in tiers. So from 50 to 46, you can interchange all these guys or even throw in an honorable mention. I'm not going to bat an eye, right? These are kind of in tiers of 5 throughout this list. Moving over to the next quote-unquote tier, but also number 45, we have DeJounte Murray. It's an old-school two-way guard with the length and the intuition that has helped him become one of the best defenders in the NBA for years and years now. He did have a down year last year, I will say, but I am expecting a bounce back with Quinn as the full-time head coach going into next year, unless Trae Young gets him fired. But DeJounte Murray, he's still super underrated, even going to Atlanta from San Antonio. And I think next year he has a better year. I'm not going to say an all-star level year, but he definitely has a bit of a bounce back in my opinion. Chris Middleton at number 44. he is one of the best Robins in the league, as we see a lot of cases where, like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, it's kind of two Batmans trying to figure it out. Or Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, how it's kind of two Batmans trying to figure it out. Chris Middleton is definitely a number 2. He's never been questioned for the number 1 on this team, and he plays his role to one of the best levels that you possibly can, is basically what I'm trying to say. But Chris Middleton, he's a consistent guy on both ends of the court. Sure, he had a bit of a down year last year, but a lot of that can be scrapped up to injuries. I think he's going to be looking for a bounce back in a big way this year, as Milwaukee fell short of their goals last year, and they're going to be looking to get back and better than ever. Evan Mobley, or EV4, he had a tale of 2 seasons, as, again, he was top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year, had amazing strides in the regular season, looked amazing, and really, I mean, he has the potential to be the best player on this Cavs team in 2 to 3 years. But he's already, the second half of the year, I'm strictly going to say was the playoffs. That playoff series was so atrocious that I have kind of doubted Evan Mobley now going into next year. But I know he's already a high-impact player on both sides of the court with huge upside and the potential to win multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards in his future. But I just want to see a bit more consistency on the higher stage. Granted, that was his first chance at it. But you can't get outplayed by my Mitchell Robinson here at the biggest stage in the NBA playoffs. Moving over to Jrue Holiday at 42. He's the best perimeter defender in the game, and that's not just my opinion. That's from the game's best scorers. That's from the Devin Bookers and the Kevin Durants of the world, the guys that are giving you 30 on every night. They say Jrue Holiday is the toughest guard, and I'm going to take their word for it. They're the guys going out there and having to go against Jrue Holiday, right? But he's still he's a super physical player, is my point here. He's going to give you a defensive aggression as well as 19 points a night, attacking the rim at a high rate. And he really, to me, puts this Bucks team over the top and makes them a title contender for the next couple years. At number 41, I do have Kristaps Porzingis, a new Boston Celtic, by the way. But he's one of the most underrated players in the league, and I think a large part of that was his situation there in Washington, as they have been mediocre for the last 2 or 3 years. But Kristaps Porzingis, he's coming off of his healthiest season since his rookie year or his second year, one of those two. But last year he played 75 games, and a lot of the games he missed was not due to injury. It was coach's decision for rest. So Kristaps Porzingis is still a guy that can give you all NBA defense. And last year, he was giving you all-NBA defense as well as 23 points a night on the offensive end. I mean, how often do you see a guy that's 7'3" shooting 40% from 3 on 7 attempts a game? You do not see it often at a high rate and at a high level, especially from a guy like Kristaps Porzingis. And that's why he's my number 41 guy. I think if he can just go to Boston and shoot at a high level like he's been his entire career, and average, let's say, 19 or 20 instead of 23, I think Boston, I mean, it's hard to pick against them next year. Moving over to number 40, and again, I know it might seem low, and maybe it is, but hear me out. It's going to be DeMar DeRozan, one of the best scorers here in the NBA, and he does it in the throwback style, in the mid-range, aside from, from the perimeter like 99% of players. But DeMar is on the downtrend for his career, and he didn't have a great year last year, in all honesty. Now, he did have a great year 2 years ago, maybe a career year, some would say, but he didn't make it out the first round 2 years ago. And this past year, he didn't make it to the playoffs, right? So, I mean, it's for a Bulls team, he's done amazing, right? He's had okay stats and okay production, but he hasn't won anything over the last couple years. And I think just with him being on the downtrend also of his career, I felt like it was reasonable to have him as the number 40 spot. Maybe he should be higher. I would understand that argument. Mikal Bridges at number 39 is, if you want to talk about untapped potential, you have to talk about Mikal Bridges, as he looked like a career 3-and-D guy, a career role player for Phoenix, but then he was traded for Kevin Durant at the midseason mark last year, and then he showed flashes of playing like Kevin Durant, as in the 27 games with Brooklyn, again, a smaller sample size, but granted, he managed to, most importantly, keep his Iron Man streak alive, playing every single game last season. I don't think he's missed a game in his entire career, which has been like a 4 or 5 year career. So shout out to Mikal Bridges, as you never see durability like that anymore. But he also jumped up to 26 points per game, which was almost a 10-point increase from his time in Phoenix on the same shot attempts. So he was just being a little bit more aggressive, still same shot attempts, but he was just being able to, play a little bit better there in Brooklyn, right? Be more of a lead role. He had to be the guy for Brooklyn. And they almost took a couple games off of Philly there in the first round. Moving over to Zach LaVine. And this is a guy that has polished his game year after year and has slowly become one of the game's top scorers. I said last year during the middle of the year that this offense needed to run through him. Not two Batmans, not a 1A, 1B, but LaVine's number one and DeMar's a complementary scorer. And this offense did that in the second half of the year, and they looked better when they did that. So hopefully they can continue continue that trend going into next year, but maybe not, as Zach LaVine's been in trade discussions for the last couple years, and he might even be moved at the deadline next year. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Julius Randle at 37, a physical face-up 4, and he's a roller coaster of a ride, to say the least. I will say I'm not the biggest fan, but I respect what he's done, and he's been in the All-NBA conversations for the last 3 years, and I want to respect that, as he's also kind of brought New York back, all right, to relevancy over the last couple of years. So shout out to Julius Randle. Number 36 is going to be Bradley Beal, another guy that might be low, but hear me out, as again, he's one of the game's best scorers, and he was also moved this offseason to the Phoenix Suns to join Kevin Durant, to join Devin Booker, as we know that team is star loaded, right? But reports say that he's going to be at the one next season. He's going to be playing point guard for the Suns. So that'll be interesting to see him more of a playmaker than a scorer. But it's also going to be fun to see Bradley Beal play meaningful basketball again, as he hasn't since 2018, when that Wizards team was last relevant. So it's been a while for Bradley Beal, and he's now back in a situation where he can play at a very high level. So it's going to be a fun year, right, for Bradley Beal and Phoenix. Moving over to the top 35, and it's going to kick off with Zion Williamson. And this is the first case in this list where I mentioned earlier in the intro, where the talent just simply overcomes and it overtakes the availability aspect. As again, your best ability is availability. We all know that saying, but the talent of Zion when he's on the court, even in limited work, is just too much to have any lower on this list. It feels disrespectful, right? But also, I think due to his availability, this is where it plays a part, as it's disrespectful to have him any higher on this list because he doesn't play as many games as the guys above him. But this is still an all-NBA level player when he's healthy. But of course, we know that is the problem. He's never healthy. As a selfish basketball fan, I hope he never has a question about his health again. But that's in a perfect world, and we know that's probably not going to happen, as that might be an ongoing situation. But as far as this list, again, he's too talented to leave off, but due to his health, it's too disrespectful to put him any higher. Zion Williamson, hopefully we get you back on the court for a long period of time. Moving over to Karl Anthony Towns at number 34, and he may be the greatest three-point shooting center or big of all time, and statistics would back that up, and he's not close to done here in his NBA career. As some would say, he's still that franchise-level center that we knew a couple years ago, and at some points, he does show that, I will say that, but he's not living up to the hype that we set for him years ago, or even the NBA GM set for him a couple years ago. As let's remember, after his rookie year, I think that they always have those offseason GM polls for all the teams, and they set out of everyone in the league, over LeBron, over everybody else, they would start their franchise with Karl Anthony Towns over other guys in the league, right? So there was definitely a lot of expectations for him, and whether if it's due to injury or just coming up short, he hasn't really lived up to that hype of being a franchise-level guy. Regardless, this year I'd love to see a more aggressive Cat from day one, and hopefully a more healthy Cat. But again, I want to see an argument that made this year from Cat, as the Timberwolves right now seem to be siding with the younger Anthony Edwards. Can Karl Anthony Towns get back to the top of his game and make this an argument going forward to, if it came down to it, if they had to move one of these guys, who would they move, right? But moving over to Lauri Markkanen at number 33, as he was a first-time All-Star last year. Amazing year. It just sucks as a Cavs fan we didn't get to see that just 2 years ago. Regardless, he's an effortless shooter who doesn't have to go out of his way or derail the offense to rack up points and make a winning impact on a night-in and night-out basis. I wouldn't be shocked if he came into next year and had another All-Star level year. But again, Lauri Markkanen, amazing year, deserves his credit here at number 33. Brandon Ingram at 32, teammate of Thanos, number 35, Zion Williamson. But in short, some would say he's baby KD, baby Kevin Durant. because given his length and his offensive scoring ability, he resembles Kevin Durant in a minor way, right? And when he's healthy, he's an all-star level talent. And I think just watching him, he's more of an eye test player than a statistical player, definitely. But Brandon Ingram, top 32, I think that's a very fair spot. But you can make the argument he's worse than a couple players on this screen here. Darius Garland, again, point guard for the Cavaliers. This is a franchise-changing point guard as he has next-level vision and scoring ability with plenty of untapped potential, plenty of room to grow to become one of the game's biggest stars. But especially on the bigger stages, we want to see him play a little bit better. 2 years ago against the Hawks in that play-in, he didn't play the best. Last year against the Knicks in the playoffs, he didn't play the best aside from one game. So we want to see a more consistent Darius Garland on the bigger stages so we can really get back and win at a higher level. Because I think the playoff success of this team, or will be determined rather, based off of the growth and improvement in performance of Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. Because we know what Donovan Mitchell is going to give us on a night-in and night-out basis. But what can Garland and Mobley do to improve their games and play at an even higher level to put that team over the top and win at a high rate? I think Darius Garland, super talented player, top 31 for sure in the NBA. Maybe I'm even underrating him a little bit. Moving over to Tyrese Halliburton in the top 30. A modern-day point guard, a manipulator of defenses who controls the game at all times. And he's also going to give you some knockdown shooting ability with 21 points a night, right? I really believe this Pacers team can make the playoffs next year, and it all starts with their point guard being healthy in Tyrese Halliburton and having another year like he did last year, another all-star level year. Tyrese Halliburton, top 30 for me, no doubt. Jaren Jackson Jr. in my best Paul Heyman impersonation. He is the reigning, defending NBA Defensive Player of the Year. And this is an evolutionary shot blocker who was so good last year. Many thought that his stats were inflated. Many thought that, there was a rumor going around that the Grizzlies stat keeper was boosting his stats because of how many blocks Jaren Jackson was getting. Absolutely insane. That's how good he was last year. But again, like I said earlier with Desmond Bane, with Ja Morant being out for the first 25 games of next year, the Grizzlies need someone to step up and be more aggressive offensively. I'm hoping it could be Jaren Jackson because if that is the case, he's going to shoot up these rankings as one of the top 25 players here in the NBA. Moving over to 28, it is Jalen Brunson as he untapped a lot of potential last year. I keep referencing that, but again, that happens a lot here in basketball. And he was quite literally everything for New York, especially late in the year last year. But some would say that if he didn't get hurt in the postseason in that second round, the Knicks could have ended up winning that series against the Miami Heat. But Jalen Brunson, last year he jumped up to 24 points to 6 assists a game, and you can only expect those to go up with more comfortableness in his offense, right? That he knows he's the guy on his team, and he put a lot of people on notice last year, including myself. But I would love to see another jump in his game this year. Maybe he can flirt with 28 points a game, right? Maybe 28 and 8. I think would be a very big jump for Jalen Brunson next year, but those are all NBA numbers, so I'm not going to put that pressure on Jalen Brunson. Regardless, great year. I just want to see it again one more time before I move him any higher. Pascal Siakam, he's a do-it-all player who expanded his game each and every year of his career. He's improved his game every year of his career, and he's been the face of the franchise ever since Kawhi left town. So, say what you want. Tornado P, he can only do spin moves. Whatever you want to say about Pascal Siakam. I think he's still a top 3 power forward in the NBA today. And if he's giving you 24 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists on a night, that is elite. And he's a borderline top 25 guy for me. And it's going to be interesting because he's another one of those guys that might get traded at the midseason mark next season. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays on a different team as he's only been with Toronto so far in his career. Moving over to number 26, I have Domantas Sabonis before we take a break. And again, if I was stricter on health, this is a guy that's a surefire, if I can talk. A surefire top 20, top 25 guy. But again, there's 4 or 5 guys on this top 50 that the talent was just too much, and that just overcame the availability aspect. But if I was stricter on health, Sabonis would be a top 25 guy, no doubt in my mind. But he's giving you 20 points a night with 13 rebounds, 8 assists, a near triple-double as a 6'11 power forward, right? Or center, if some would say. But you can argue that this is the best player on the Kings team, and I wouldn't bat an eye, right? If you want to switch him and my next guy, I would not have, I wouldn't blame you for that. But again, borderline top 25 guy, as Domantas Sabonis very heavily underrated here in the NBA. Let's go over here to take a little bit of a break here as we ran through 25 names, including honorable mentions, so 45 names. So just to reset here to look at the updated numbers, right? Just take a second to look at the screen. You can see the 26 through 50 on this list. And of course, if you don't see a name on here, it is either a player that's going to be in the top 25 or is an honorable mention, of course. All right, 3, 2, 1. I think that should be enough time to look over at these recapped rankings here, right? Moving over to the top 25. We're going to start the top 25 with a teammate of Domantas Sabonis. I kind of gave this away a couple seconds ago. But De'Aaron Fox, Swipa, statistically the clutchest player in the league last season. He's a blazing fast point guard, maybe the fastest guy in the league, who finally found a consistent jumper last year. And when he did, he averaged 25 and 6 a night, ending the Sacramento Kings' 16-year playoff drought next to Sabonis, right, as the number 3 seed in the West. And this team took the reigning champion Golden State Warriors to 7 games in the first round. You can make the argument, if De'Aaron Fox doesn't break his hand in Game 5, maybe this Kings team advances, and maybe they beat the Warriors, setting up a very interesting second round against the Lakers, who the Kings had the Lakers number. So maybe, even though the Lakers were rolling, the Kings found something out, and boom, they're in the Western Conference Finals. Then anything can happen. But again, that's a lot of what-ifs. Regardless, I love their offseason because they brought everyone back. They didn't overspend or they didn't overtrade. And I think next year, with the continuity in this Kings team, they're going to be back and they're going to be, fighting for another top 3 spot here in the Western Conference, in my opinion. Moving over here to number 24, it's going to be the beard. It's going to be James Harden, a guy who is currently trying to put on some weight so he can be traded after a viral photo gets put out. But James Harden, he was the league leader in assists last year, and if we can get past the fact that he's not the 2018 version of himself, if he's not the Houston Rockets version of himself, we wouldn't be judging him this hard, as this is a guy that, that's not scoring 30 points a night anymore, right, like he was there in Houston, but he might literally be the best Robin here in the NBA, as it takes a special player to take the back seat like he has and to adapt your game to, in points of your career, to still play at an all-star level after adapting your game dramatically, as he's more of a playmaker now than ever, and he's not so much score first like he was there in Houston for years and years. But James has done that. He's transformed his game, and he's helped Philly to be a top seed in the East for the last 2 years now. So if he gets traded again at this in this offseason or at the midseason mark, it'll be interesting to see how he adapts again, as the rumors now are that he's going to be in the Los Angeles with the Clippers. So a dynamic with him, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. I think that's going to be a very interesting 4 there. But James Harden, no doubt, still one of the best players in the league. And I think we just grade him a lot harder than others because he does still struggle in the playoffs, but he's also taking a back seat due to his situation. Moving over to Jamal Murray, number 23 on the season. And this is a ranking strictly based off of the playoffs alone, because that alone justifies being a top 25 player. As Jamal Murray, he's a creative, crafty point guard with deep range and every single layup and finish in his bag. But all that's slowing him down is his health over the last couple years. And I think he finally got healthy, no doubt, right? As when we look at his last 2 healthy playoff seasons and playoff runs, when he was healthy, of course, we first got to go back to the bubble in 2020, and he was putting on multiple 40, 50-point games throughout that stretch, as I think they came back down 3-1 twice in the same postseason, and then they got to the Western Conference Finals. Again, they had 2 3-1 comebacks before getting there, and they were gassed, and they ran into the Lakers team, and of course the Lakers would beat them and go on to win the finals. But then we move over to this last postseason, as again, he did great in the bubble, tremendous scoring outburst, and then we move into this past offseason where he simply made the Nuggets an unfair team to play, as you already have to deal with Nikola Jokic, arguably the best player in the world, but then you got to deal with a guard that's making tough shot after tough shot, giving you 30 to 35 a night, and again, he really made this team just unfair to play in the playoffs, because that doesn't even count in the Michael Porter Jr.'s and the role players of this Nuggets team that really made them the most complete team in basketball. But in short, when healthy, Jamal Murray, when he's healthy, this Nuggets team can win a title. If he's not, of course, they've struggled the last couple years, but he's definitely the key for why this team was so good and so dominant in their playoff run last season. But moving over to number 22, and I'm going to go with Anthony Edwards. I mentioned him earlier, but he's now the franchise guy for the Minnesota Timberwolves, as this is a top 5 level bucket getter in the NBA. He is switching back to the number 5, which has been his patented number over his career. So we should only expect a jump this season. And I promise you that's not why he's number 22, but it's just something I wanted to throw out there, as he was a first-time All-Star last season. And even in his short 3 or 4 year career, he's single-handedly become the Timberwolves' next franchise guy, overtaking Karl Anthony Towns, which, again, a lot of people viewed that as their guy. Anthony Edwards said, no, I'm the guy here, right? Take a back seat. But he's done all of this while being one of the best playoff performers also in his young 3 to 4 year career. He took a game off of the Nuggets, which LeBron James and Anthony Davis couldn't do in the Western Conference Finals. And Anthony Edwards did that in the first round against the eventual champion Denver Nuggets team. I love watching him, right? He screams superstar for the next decade in this league. But is he going to ever get the recognition, right? Because he is in a smaller market. He is in Minnesota. Is he ever going to get that fame and the recognition from the general fans? Because he deserves it with how he's been playing in his young career. Moving over to Bam Adebayo at number 21. And again, a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And again, that gets thrown around a lot, as well as a player that can guard 1 through 5. But Bam Adebayo is really one of them. If there's 10 of them, he's one of them. If there's 3 of them, he's one of them, right? You guys get the picture. Bam Adebayo can guard anybody on a basketball court, as in the paint. I mean, he anchors those patented zone coverages that he loved to run last year that helped them get to the finals and be successful over the last couple years. He anchors their defense. He can guard 1 through 5. He does everything on that side of the court. But on offense, he's also one of the best playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I just think the only thing holding him back is his offensive aggressiveness when looking for his own shot. And if he could be as aggressive as he was in the finals last year trying to score the ball for an entire season, I think this is a dude that can flirt with the top 10, top 15 spot, as crazy as that might sound. But if he jumps up to 20 points a night with giving you all NBA defense and being that great, or how great he is on that side of the court, I think he could really have a different conversation next year with where Bam Adebayo could be on a list like this. Moving over to the top 20 now, and we're going to start this top 20 with a player I don't necessarily like, but I have to respect the talent at the end of the day, as this is a guy that has yet to figure out what the defensive side of the court looks like, but he's still a walking 27-point, 10-assist guy a night, and he's forever going to be one of the best shooters and playmakers in this league until he retires. But the reason why he gets the edge over guys under him is because it's, in my opinion, it's different when you're the guy on a team compared to a guy or the secondary guy on a team. This is the guy that averages the numbers that he does and has the performances that he does on the top defenders, against double teams, against traps, each and every night. It's worth saying. It's worth to mention, is all I'm saying. Trae Young he goes through a lot on each and every night, and I think it's worth mentioning that, again, that even I'm not the biggest fan, but I respect the talent that he is, because he is the guy on a team. And even at his size, he has to work even harder to get the numbers and the stats and the wins that he does. Again, I wouldn't be mad if you moved him down a couple spots, but he should have a bounce back year there with Quinn Snyder there as the full-time head coach. Moving over to number 19, I have Paul George. He's the second case, I believe, on this list where the talent just overtakes the availability factor, as Paul George is maybe the smoothest player in the game ever on the offensive end of the court. It's hard not to watch Paul George and not enjoy watching him play the game, but he's still an all-NBA level player. He's one of the best on both ends of the court, and he can really take the pressure off of the stars next to him, which in this case for the last couple years has been Kawhi, where in moments Kawhi can be a secondary star because Paul George is that great. Or if Kawhi Leonard's out like he is on a yearly basis, you can give the ball to Paul George and he can carry you to the Western Conference Finals like he did against the Suns just a few seasons ago. This guy, Paul George, he's super underrated, And again, if he's just healthy, he's an all-NBA player. But again, he hasn't had the games, I guess, to be that on a consistent level. Regardless, still a top 20 guy, whether if he's healthy or not. The talent is too much to go any lower than number 19. Moving over to Jaylen, no left hand, but get the biggest contract in NBA history. Brown, of course, I got to throw a little joke in there. But Jaylen Brown, all jokes aside, this is an all-NBA player who defends multiple positions, I would say 1 through 3. And he's really cemented himself as a top 25 player in this game, for one, but also one of the best scorers in the game of basketball. Aside from the Eastern Conference Finals this past year against the Heat, he's been an amazing postseason player. You can argue he's been better than Jason Tatum throughout their time together there in Boston. No doubt, I think he's worth the money that he got, regardless of his left hand. If he can't go to his left, Jaylen Brown is still one of the best players in the game. And as long as he's next to the guy that there in Jason Tatum in the green and gold, I think this team's going to be a title contender for as long as those two are together. Jaylen Brown is definitely a pivotal piece for their success moving forward, though. Let's please not overshadow that just because of one bad playoff series against the Heat. Moving over to number 17, this might be some biased, but I don't care. This is the most offensively skilled player we have ever seen. That is including Kobe, Jordan, LeBron, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. This is Kyrie Irving. He's number 17 on this list, and I believe he is the most disrespected superstar in the league because of his religious comments off the court and his decisions off the court were religious-based. This is still a 6'2" guard with the best handle we've ever seen, giving you 27 a night on great efficiency. He can play on the highest stage. He doesn't back down from anybody, and he can do everything on that side of the court. He just signed a new deal this past offseason with a couple M's on the thing. He just signed a new contract extension with the Dallas Mavericks, so shout out to Kyrie Irving. I'm just hoping that he and Luka can figure something out this year in Dallas to win at a high level. But Kyrie Irving, I don't care if this is biased or not. He's the top 17 player in the NBA for me. Ja Morant at number 16, a show-stopping guard. This is a guy that he does the unthinkable each and every night. He's must-watch TV. And this is a guy that you got to get your popcorn ready for, simply put, with what he does on the court. But this is a guy that has averaged 26, 8, and 6 over the last couple years. And he has turned this Memphis franchise around and back into a contender again. And again, we have to worry about his off-the-court antics, right? It cost him 25 games to start next season. But he does have the potential to be an all-time great player. He has the potential to be a Hall of Famer in the NBA. But the question for Ja Morant going forward, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, so I'll keep it short, but can he stay out of his own way enough throughout his career to maintain his status and be a Hall of Fame player one day? I think he can, and I think at least going forward, that's my hope, that he can turn things around a little bit, right? Turn the page. Moving over to the top 15, we're going to start with a 24-year-old guard in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or SGA, however you want to say it. But I love watching this dude play, as his touch is elite, as well as his footwork is impeccable, if we want to use some big words there. This is a guy that averaged 31.5 points, 5.5 assists, 2 steals, a block a game, and he carried this Thunder team that was, before the season, widely considered to be a bottom feeder to a play-in spot and 1 win away from the NBA playoffs. Even at 24 years old and only being, only really 2 or 3 years of having this increased role, I think he's still a top 15 player in the league, and I would definitely take him over the guys under him. Moving over to Donovan Mitchell at number 14. As a Cavs fan, there's not enough I can say about this man, right? Regardless of if he wants to be here or not, regardless of if he's going to leave us in 2 years, he still walked into this franchise with the young core that we have, and he led us to our first 50-win season and playoff appearance without LeBron since like the 90s, and that was before I was born, right, in all honesty. But this is a guy that's capable of putting up 71 points in a game, which he did last season. One of the greatest performances in games ever, right, in NBA history. And I would gladly say I was able to witness that game there against the Chicago Bulls. But we did fall pretty hard in the playoffs, and I will say that might be playing a part in why he is lower on these rankings. But there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be back next season. And again, in my opinion, if Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and the supporting cast can take that next step, I think that's enough to be a sneaky title contender next year, as with how great Spida is and how great his track record is in the playoffs, if we could just give him a little bit of help, or more help at least, I think we could be a dangerous playoff team. Donovan Mitchell, no doubt, happy to have him in Cleveland, basically. Kawhi Leonard at number 13. And this is the final case on this list where the talent just simply overcomes the availability factor. I keep saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it to get my point across. As Kawhi Leonard is an all-time winner, and he is a two-way monster on both sides of the court who could easily crack the top 10 of any list you want to make here in the NBA, but his body doesn't allow it, right? That's the biggest thing, is his body hasn't allowed him to be an all-time great player. Well, I take that back, as he has been an all-time great player, but I'm saying he could be in the conversation for like top 10, top 25 all-time, and I don't know if he's there because of his injuries and his body kind of breaking down over the years. I shouldn't have to tell you how talented the Claw is on both sides of the ball and just how overall talented he is. We just have to hope that he can stay healthy going forward. And as selfish basketball fans, I hope that we get that on a consistent basis, right? Damian Lillard at number 12, and I wanted to put him at 11, but I knew I was going to have pitchforks and flamethrowers outside my house if I didn't have, or if I had him above number 11. But Damian Lillard, no doubt, the clear-cut third best point guard in the league. And on surface level, that's not saying much. He's the third best at his position, whatever. But it is also the most stacked position in basketball. I think we have at least 10 point guards that made the top 50, as crazy as that sounds. But he's still 30-something years old, and he's still dominant at the top of his game. I mean, last year he averaged 32 points and 7 assists a game. For the first month or so of the season, he had this Blazers team, who's very young, as the number 1 seed. He's that talented. He's also a guy like Donovan Mitchell that put up 71 points in a game this past season. It was more efficient than Spida's, I will say that. But we're all waiting right now on just that notification of Damian Lillard gets traded to the Miami Heat. That's what we're all waiting for as of right now. And if he does get traded there, right, that's going to be his first winning situation in years. And I can't wait to see Dame in Miami to be everything that they're missing right there in that core of, as Jimmy Butler and Bam aren't the most regular season players, but Damian Lillard is, and he can come there and keep them relevant until Jimmy and Bam are ready for the playoffs. Regardless, Dame, I feel like he's super underrated, even at number 12. But again, there's an argument he could be top 8. But I think I would just prefer the other guys above him just a little bit more, or they've just done more the last couple years. It could be a combination of both, right? Jimmy Butler is a guy that I don't think is a better basketball player than Damian Lillard. However, he has accomplished more than Dame over the last couple years and at a very high rate. Jimmy Butler is a well-rounded star who there's no other person in the league that has the will to win like Jimmy Butler. As for what he's done the last few years in the postseason is remarkable, right? And I can care less about the lackluster regular seasons, strictly based off of his success in the postseason the last couple years, as he's carried the Heat to the Eastern Conference Finals the last 3 seasons, and he's been to the finals twice in that stretch. Now, he hasn't got over the hump over these last couple years, and he did have a poor finals this past year, but it is still a testament to the greatness of Jimmy Butler to lead one of the few 8 seeds in NBA history to the NBA Finals. And again, they took a game or 2 off of Denver. They couldn't close the deal, but it's still a testament to Jimmy's greatness that he was able to get them to that point, and it was still one of the best individual playoff runs we've ever seen of all time here in the NBA. If Jimmy Butler's in your top 10, there's not going to be an argument for me. If he's in your top 5, I would have an argument. But Jimmy Butler, to me, 10, 11, right? He's in that range. But Jimmy Butler, super talented, just not a top 10 player for me. We're going to enter the top 10 now, and I will start by apologizing for the background noise. If you hear these birds, I don't know what fed them this morning, but they are going absolutely crazy. So if you hear that in the background, my apologies. Regardless, number 10, we're going to start with the reincarnated Kobe Bryant. That's a bold statement, right? But Devin Booker, I mean, he's one of the game's most polished shot makers and creators, with the technique to get off any shot he wants, with the skill to do that as well, and to make those tough shots time after time throughout the entire season. And the only person that can stop Devin Booker is Devin Booker in my eyes, because you can't really stop him. You just have to hope that he misses the shot, and you just have to accept that most nights you're probably going to, he's probably going to give you 30 points to 40 points. He's no doubt the best player on the Suns for the last couple years, And I think he was the best player on the Suns last year, even though Kevin Durant came over at the midseason mark. As in the postseason last year, he was putting up 40-point after 40-point game on crazy efficiency. I mean, there was games he was missing 2 or 3 shots and putting up 40 points in a single game. Devin Booker is that talented, and it also helps that he has Kevin Durant for competing, right? But he outperformed Kevin Durant last year in the postseason. At least I'll say that. But considering the arc of his career and how he's improved throughout his career, I think it's only a matter of time that Devin Booker has a crazy season, as I think he's one of those players that's one deep playoff run away, or one finals appearance, or one finals win away from being a top 5 player in the NBA. As I know he's been there before, but he's not the same player as he was just 2 years ago. And that's how much Devin Booker is improving. Moving over to numbers 9 and 8, we're going to talk about the duo here in Los Angeles. As at number 9, I have LeBron James. At number 8, I have Anthony Davis. For LeBron James, it feels illegal to have a guy like this low. He's no doubt one of the greatest players of all time, and he's still a dominant force capable of excelling in any role, especially at 40 years old, right? And I want to be clear when I say this that I didn't want my bias to get in the way of LeBron. I'm a Cavs fan. But I think this is a guy that can still be the best player in the NBA on any given night because of how talented he is. But I am slowly accepting that we aren't going to have this guy for much longer. And in all honesty, it's going to be hard to imagine an NBA without LeBron James, because his first year in the league was the year I was born. I've grown up watching LeBron dominate and be in the finals year after year after year. He might be the greatest player to ever play this game, so it's definitely going to be a different NBA without a player like LeBron James. I'm just trying to appreciate him while I can here for these next couple years. Hopefully he comes back to Cleveland for one more year, right? Anthony Davis, just last week we ranked the top 10 centers in the NBA, and it's hard to believe, I mentioned this then, it's hard to believe that, growing up I was playing, 2Ks, right, to get my basketball fix in. And it was, in those 2K games, you can always create your my player, right? Your own personal player, and you can follow your player throughout their career. And depending on how good or bad you do, you have different opportunities, right? Anthony Davis, one of the first 2Ks I played, he was on the rookie showcase. So it's kind of like the pre-draft game, how well you did, determined where you got drafted. And I just remember Anthony Davis in like 2K12. This is over 11 years ago. Would just always come out there and dominate. And, boom, I've grown up. He's had a decorated career. And 11 years later, he's an All-NBA 75 member, one of the 75 greatest to ever lace him up. And to this day, he's still a defense in himself. He's an anchor in himself. Whenever he's healthy, this Lakers team is a top 3 defense in the NBA. And he looks, if he's healthy again, this team is going to be at that same point, yet again, right? Even though his shot has regressed a little bit over the years, and he's not as much of a threat from outside the paint, I think he's still an elite offensive force, giving you 25 a night. There's no shocker here that he's a top 10 guy, for me at least, when he's healthy. And Anthony Davis is a top 8 player, in my opinion. Moving over to number 7, we're going to have the reigning, defending MVP of the league, and he was nothing short of dominant last season, and that is Joel Embiid, who averaged 33 points a game with 10 rebounds and 2 blocks. He, coincidentally, this is the guy that was one spot ahead of Anthony Davis in last week's video. He's also one spot ahead of him in the top 50. But this is still Joel Embiid. He's an intimidating interior force on both ends of the court, and he's become one of the game's best anchors, as well as perimeter scorers to even add to his game. As, of course, the biggest thing missing from Joel Embiid's game is the championship success, the playoff success, as he hasn't, he's had the teams, but he hasn't been able to get over the hump yet. And he has the tools to do it, right? He can score in the mid-range with the best of them. He can put anybody in the paint and dunk on them. He can also be a top 5 defense in himself. There's a reason he was the MVP. But he needs some playoff success. And I think if it doesn't happen this year in Philly, it's going to be very interesting to see if he eventually wants out after next season. But moving over to number 6, it's Jason Tatum. And whether by design or chance, this is one of the toughest shot makers here in the NBA. But you can still, he's still going to give you the elite production on both ends of the court. When he was averaging 30 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. And this is a guy that's coming off of another great season, maybe his best career year, and that's including that 1 year where he went to the finals, as he was an all-star starter and MVP this previous season. He put up the most points in an all-star game in NBA history, which I'm sure will be broke next year, but the record still stands. He would go on to the playoffs, have a great first round, and he would eventually put up the most points in a Game 7 in NBA history with 51 points in a closeout game against the Philadelphia 76ers en route to the Eastern Conference Finals. And he was 1 game away from returning to the NBA Finals for 2 straight years. And though Jason Tatum doesn't have the major individual awards like a Joel Embiid, right, or LeBron James, Jason Tatum, he has put up the numbers his entire career, and he's still an MVP candidate on a year in and year out basis, who is getting it done in the playoffs. I think he's he's having some of the most playoff success in any career ever, right? Aside from championships, and that's even just in his young career. I don't know if Jason Tatum's ever missed the playoffs in his career, is a way to put it. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Jason Tatum, but I respect what he's done, and I think he's a top 6, top 5 level player here in the NBA. And again, I give him the edge over a guy like Joel Embiid. Even though Embiid was the MVP of last year, Tatum's always had his number, and he's always beat him on the highest stages. So that's why Tatum is my number 6 over Joel Embiid. But moving over to the top 5, right? We're going to start with Kevin Durant. Maybe the greatest scorer to ever play this game. And he is the definition of unstoppable, right? If you look up unstoppable, I'm sure Kevin Durant's jumper, there will be a picture of it. The only person on this earth that can stop Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. Everything he does on the offensive side of the ball is done at a historically high rate, even at 34 years old. Even at his current day age, he is maybe the best system player in the history of the game. He does everything on that side of the ball at an historic rate. And he's maybe the biggest key for the Suns team to win the championship next season. And you might say, hey, that's an obvious take. He's one of the best players in the world. But I think he's the guy that needs to take that back seat next year to a guy like Devin Booker, because Kevin Durant can still give you 30 being a secondary star. We've seen it before there in Golden State. But how much more do we need to say? I mean, it's the Slim Reaper. It's Kevin Durant. This is a guy that doesn't get a haircut throughout the entire NBA season. But when he does, that's going to be a scary day. He's still a top 5 player. There's not much more I need to explain why Kevin Durant is so high on this list. Luka Doncic at number 4, maybe my favorite player to watch in the NBA today. This is a guy that's a master manipulator who he works at his own pace, all right? And he's going to give your favorite player 30 points a night on any given night, because this guy is that talented, right? The gravity he has on the court also is insane. But the questions don't lie with his play style and his skill. It leads to if it will lead to winning basketball, as I don't believe the heliocentric style offense that Luka has been in the last couple of years will lead to winning at a high level. However, I think this year with Kyrie Irving there for a full year, a day one participant, they don't have to make any major change-ups in the middle of the year. They've really filled out this roster, so I think it can be a 1A, 1B system where Luka can be the guy, Kyrie can complement him, and this team I think they can win at a high level, in all honesty, with the additions they've made outside of their 2 stars. Regardless, I really think that Luka Doncic was one of those guys that is 1 playoff run away from being considered as the best player in the league. And that might sound crazy, but if Luka Doncic goes out and wins the title next year, I think we're having a conversation on if he's the best player in the league over Nikola Jokic, over Giannis, etc., etc. But moving over to the top 3, Steph Curry, Wardell, Stephen Curry. This is the question I asked you guys in the intro. Who is the best player in the world? And it is Steph Curry as number 3 for me. He's the most influential player in the history of basketball, right? I think it's crazy to think that a title like that can go to a 6'3" guard that is out of Davidson. He's named Wardell, and he was born in the same hospital as LeBron James. Regardless, this is the first ballot Hall of Famer. I think a top 10 player of all time here in the NBA. And even at 35 years old, he's still a top 3 player in the game. There's no reason, with his play style, he can't also play 5 to 6 more years with how he plays the game of basketball. Another guy, I guess, just like LeBron James, I think it's going to be hard to imagine an NBA without a guy like Stephen Curry. And maybe we can say that about any era, but Tim Duncan is not going to, I don't know. I think after Tim Duncan left the NBA, I think it was weird, but I don't think it's going to be as weird as a guy like LeBron James or Stephen Curry or even Kobe Bryant. It's definitely he's one of those guys, right? That he's left an impact on the game forever in the NBA. Moving over to the top two, and I'm going to cheat, but I will give you my direct answer here at the end of this. But my 1B is going to be Giannis Antetokounmpo. These guys are neck and neck with Nikola Jokic and Giannis that I couldn't really pick one, as my heart tells me Giannis, but my mind tells me Jokic. Regardless, Giannis, he is still a relentless, competitor, selfless leader. He's developed from, overseas to being maybe the NBA's best player, a 7-foot big that gives you 32 points, 12 rebounds, 6 to 7 assists a night. He does everything for this Milwaukee Bucks team, while also being, maybe the best help defender in the NBA. I considered this Bucks team, if you follow this channel at any point throughout the NBA year, I considered this Bucks team to be the best Bucks team of all time last year. And if Giannis didn't get hurt last year, I think they can live up to that hype, and I think they at least make it out the first round if Giannis doesn't go down with an injury. But Giannis, I think he's going to be back, and I think he's going to be better than ever, hungry to take back this crown solely after next season. And finally, for Nikola Jokic. I mean, he's a perennial MVP candidate who he's going to be in the best player alive conversations for probably the next decade, right? And in all honesty, right, if it wasn't for voters' fatigue, I think this is the 3 straight-time MVP award winner who just led his franchise to their first title in NBA history in dominant fashion. I think if that is the case, if Jokic won 3 straight and then he won the finals, I think there's no question who the best player in the world is, right? But voters' fatigue gave it to Joel Embiid. Not that Joel Embiid didn't deserve it, but I think it definitely should have went to Nikola Jokic. This dude is a walking triple-double at the center position, and sometimes he will make these passes or these plays or these reads that, it just happens so quickly that you can't really comprehend what's going on in his head until unless you rewind the game or you pause the game and go back and break it down frame by frame. You can't really, it's amazing how fast his brain works, and again, he just makes some of those plays that you're like, man, like he's that dude's good, right? As if anybody has to make you rewind the game or contemplate what he did, that's an amazing player. But the Joker, to me, if I had to choose between Giannis and Jokic, I'm gonna give the edge to Nikola Jokic. Maybe that's recency biased, but whatever, right? I want to see Giannis come back and take the crown next season. But that's gonna do it. Let's recap here as we went through the 50 through 26. Now you can get a good look at 25 through 1. And while this is on the screen, I'm going to get you guys out of here, as this is one of the longer episodes that we've had. But hopefully, if you guys are to this point, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel. You guys have been nothing short of amazing here in this first year of the podcast, as we haven't even hit a year yet, and we're on the road to 500 subs, right? So if you enjoyed, help us get to that next big milestone. I would really appreciate it. And without further ado, we'll see you guys tomorrow for some fantasy football content. As always, Thursday, another podcast, and Friday, another fantasy episode. We'll see you guys then. Stay happy, stay healthy. Of course, let me know down in the comments what you think, and I'll see you guys then. We're out.